Sarah Jenkins hurried through the busy hallways of Atlanta Memorial Hospital, her bright blue scrubs swishing as she walked. The morning sun streamed through the large windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. As a physical therapist, her days were always busy, but something about this Tuesday morning felt different. "Sarah, your new patient is here," called Nancy, the front desk receptionist. "He's in room 205. Sarah checked her schedule. Michael Crawford, age 32, wheelchair-bound after a car accident 2 years ago. She grabbed his file and made her way to the room, her mind already planning possible therapy approaches. When she opened the door, she wasn't prepared for what she saw. Instead of the dejected patient she usually encountered, there sat a man with the warmest smile she had ever seen. He was sitting in his wheelchair near the window, the sunlight highlighting his strong features and kind eyes. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying a gentle confidence. "You must be Ms. Jenkins." "Please call me Sarah," she replied, surprised by how his smile made her feel instantly at ease. "And you're Mr. Crawford?" "Michael," he corrected, wheeling himself closer. "I hope you don't mind, but I've heard great things about you from other patients." Sarah felt her cheeks warm slightly at the compliment. She had worked with many patients over her 5 years at Atlanta Memorial, but something about Michael's direct, friendly manner was different. As she began her initial assessment, they talked. She learned that before his accident, Michael had been a professional dance instructor. His eyes lit up when he spoke about dancing, and his hands moved gracefully as he described different styles: salsa, waltz, tango. "The accident took my legs," he said matter-of-factly, "but it couldn't take away my love for dance." Sarah watched as he demonstrated upper body movements from his wheelchair, explaining how he had adapted some dance moves. His enthusiasm was contagious, and she found herself more and more intrigued by his positive outlook. "Most people see the wheelchair first," Michael continued, his voice gentle but firm. "But I'm still the same person who loved to dance, who taught others to find joy in movement. Now I just do it differently." During the session, Sarah noticed how Michael approached each exercise with determination. He didn't complain when things were difficult, instead asking questions and trying to understand how each movement could help him gain more independence. "You know," he said during a particularly challenging stretch, "I've learned that life is like a dance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, and sometimes you have to improvise when the music changes." Sarah couldn't help but smile at his metaphor. In her years of practice, she had never met someone who faced their disability with such grace and wisdom. As their first session came to an end, Sarah found herself looking forward to their next appointment. There was something special about Michael, not just his positive attitude, but the way he saw the world. "Same time Thursday?" he asked, adjusting his wheelchair. "Yes, I'll see you then," Sarah replied, helping him gather his things. As she watched him wheel himself confidently down the hallway, Sarah felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just another patient-therapist relationship. Though she couldn't explain it yet, she knew Michael Crawford was going to change her life in ways she never expected. Later that evening, as Sarah sat in her small apartment going over patient files, she found herself lingering over Michael's. His words about dance and life kept playing in her mind. As an African-American woman in the medical field, she had faced her own challenges and prejudices. Michael's perspective on overcoming obstacles resonated with her deeply. She looked at the photo clipped to his file, a younger Michael standing tall in dance clothes, mid-spin in what appeared to be a dance studio. The joy on his face was the same joy she had seen today, wheelchair and all. "Life is like a dance," she repeated his words softly to herself, closing the file. Something told her this was just the beginning of a very special story. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself looking forward to her therapy sessions with Michael more than she wanted to admit. Thursday mornings became special, marked by his bright smile and endless stories about his dancing days. One morning, as Sarah helped Michael with his arm-strengthening exercises, she noticed something odd. Nancy, the receptionist, and 2 other nurses were watching them through the glass window, whispering among themselves. Their looks weren't exactly friendly. "Is everything okay?" Michael asked, noticing Sarah's distraction. "Yes," Sarah said quickly, but Michael wasn't fooled. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "I've seen those looks before. People don't understand when they see us together. A black woman spending time with a disabled white man. It makes them uncomfortable. Sarah felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't wanted to bring up the subject, but it was true. Some of her coworkers had been making comments. Just yesterday, her friend Lisa had pulled her aside in the break room. "Sarah, honey," Lisa had said, "don't get too attached to that Crawford patient. It's not professional." But there was something about Michael that made Sarah want to ignore those whispers. During their sessions, she learned more about his life. Before the accident, he had owned a successful dance studio downtown. He told her stories about teaching nervous teenagers to dance before their proms, helping couples prepare for their weddings, and working with seniors who wanted to stay active. The accident changed everything, Michael explained one day as they worked on his leg exercises. "My dance partner left, my students slowly disappeared, and the studio had to close. But you know what's strange? I don't feel bitter anymore." Sarah watched him demonstrate a seated dance move, his upper body flowing smoothly despite his wheelchair. "How do you stay so positive?" she asked. Michael smiled, that warm smile that seemed to light up the whole room. "Because every day I'm alive is a chance to dance with life in a new way. Besides," he added with a wink, "I have the best physical therapist in Atlanta." Sarah tried to keep things professional, but she couldn't help noticing little things about Michael. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. How he always remembered to ask about her family. The gentle way he encouraged other patients in the therapy room. One day, Sarah's mother called her during lunch break. "Baby, the nurses are talking," her mother said worriedly. "They say you're spending extra time with some disabled white patient. You need to be careful with your reputation at that hospital." "Mama," Sarah replied firmly, "Michael is just a patient who needs help, and he's one of the kindest people I've ever met." But even as she said those words, Sarah knew she was lying to herself. Michael had become more than just a patient. Their therapy sessions were filled with laughter and deep conversations. He shared his dreams of teaching adaptive dance classes someday, and she told him about her struggles as one of the few black physical therapists at the hospital. During one session, Michael surprised her by playing music from his phone, a slow, beautiful jazz piece. "Watch this," he said, and began moving his wheelchair in a graceful pattern across the floor. His upper body swayed to the music, his arms flowing like water. Dance isn't just about walking or standing. It's about feeling the music in your soul. Sarah stood mesmerized. In that moment, she didn't see a man in a wheelchair. She saw a dancer, his spirit unbroken by circumstance. As their session ended that day, Michael hesitated before leaving. "Sarah," he said softly, "I know people are talking. If it makes your job harder, I can request another therapist." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. The thought of not seeing Michael regularly made her realize something she'd been trying to deny. "No," she said firmly. "I don't care what people say. You're my patient, and we're making great progress." But as she watched him wheel away, Sarah knew she was facing a truth she couldn't ignore much longer. Her feelings for Michael were becoming deeper than any professional relationship should be, and that both thrilled and terrified her. 3 months into their therapy sessions, something unexpected happened. Sarah arrived at work to find Michael waiting in the therapy room, but this time he had brought a small Bluetooth speaker with him. "I have a different kind of therapy in mind today," he said with a mysterious smile. "Do you trust me?" Sarah looked around the empty room nervously. It was early, and none of the other therapists had arrived yet. "What are you planning?" Michael pressed play on his phone, and soft music filled the room. It was At Last by Etta James, one of Sarah's favorite songs, a fact she had mentioned weeks ago. She was surprised he remembered. "Today," Michael said, wheeling himself to the center of the room, "I'm going to teach you how to dance with someone in a wheelchair." Sarah's heart began to race. "Michael, I don't think." "Trust me," he said again, holding out his hand. "Everyone deserves to dance." Slowly, Sarah took his hand. Michael showed her how to move with him, how to follow his wheelchair's movements as if they were dance steps. His upper body was strong and graceful, guiding her through gentle turns and spins. "See," he said softly, "the chair is just part of the dance." As they moved together, Sarah forgot about everything else: the hospital, her colleagues' whispers, her mother's warnings. She saw only Michael's eyes, filled with joy and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. The spell was broken by the sound of someone dropping a clipboard. Sarah turned to see Dr. Thompson standing in the doorway, his mouth open in surprise. I was just showing Ms. Jenkins some adaptive dance techniques. Michael explained smoothly. It's important for therapists to understand different movement possibilities. Dr. Thompson nodded slowly, but Sarah saw the look in his eyes. By lunchtime, the whole hospital would be talking. Later that day, Sarah's supervisor called her into the office. Sarah, Mrs. Martinez said gently, several staff members have expressed concern about your relationship with Mr. Crawford. Sarah sat up straighter. We were practicing therapeutic movements. Dancing, Mrs. Martinez corrected. You were dancing with a patient. Sarah, you're one of our best therapists. Don't risk your career over this. That evening, as Sarah drove home, she couldn't get the morning's dance out of her mind. The way Michael had led her so confidently, how natural it felt to move with him, the warmth of his hand in hers. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Tamika. Girl, is it true? You're falling for your white wheelchair patient? Have you lost your mind? Sarah ignored the message. She pulled into her apartment complex, but instead of going inside, she sat in her car, thinking about how her life had changed since meeting Michael. The next day, Sarah tried to keep things strictly professional, but when Michael arrived for his session, you could sense something was wrong. They got to you, didn't they? He asked quietly as they worked on his exercises. Sarah avoided his eyes. Michael, yesterday wasn't appropriate. I'm your therapist. Is that all you are? He asked. The question hung in the air between them. Before Sarah could answer, Michael continued. You know what I learned after my accident? Life is too short to let other people's fears control your happiness. He wheeled himself closer to her. Sarah, when we danced yesterday, I felt whole again. Not because I could stand or walk, but because for the first time since my accident, someone saw me as more than just a man in a wheelchair. Sarah felt tears threatening to fall. Michael, I know you felt it too, he said softly. The way we move together, how we understand each other without words. That's rare, Sarah. That's special. Just then, another patient entered the room with their therapist. Sarah quickly stepped back, her heart pounding. Think about it, Michael said as their session ended. Sometimes the greatest dance of all is the one that challenges us to face our fears. As she watched him leave, Sarah knew she had a decision to make. She could listen to everyone else's opinions about what was proper and safe, or she could listen to her heart, which was telling her that sometimes love arrives in unexpected ways. That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she replayed their dance in her mind. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit what she had been feeling for weeks. She was falling in love with Michael Crawford, and no amount of social pressure or professional boundaries could change that truth. A week after their dance, Sarah made a difficult decision. She requested to transfer Michael to another physical therapist. It wasn't what her heart wanted, but she thought it was the right thing to do. Dr. Williams, an experienced therapist, would take over Michael's care. On Michael's last scheduled session with Sarah, he arrived early as usual, but instead of his normal cheerful greeting, his face was serious. So, you're giving up on me? He asked quietly, his eyes meeting hers. Sarah closed the therapy room door. Michael, I'm not giving up. I'm being professional. These feelings, they're not appropriate. What feelings? He challenged. Say it, Sarah. Be honest with yourself, at least this once. Sarah felt her hands trembling. I can't be your therapist anymore because... She took a deep breath. Because I'm falling in love with you. The silence that followed her confession seemed to last forever. Then Michael wheeled himself closer, taking her hand in his. I love you too, he said simply. I've loved you since the day you saw me as Michael the dancer, not Michael the disabled man. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks, but everyone says. Everyone can say what they want. Michael interrupted. My mother always told me, love doesn't see with its eyes, it sees with its heart. Sarah, when I'm with you, I don't feel disabled. I feel complete. Just then, Nancy walked in with some paperwork. Seeing them holding hands, she quickly backed out. The damage was done. Within an hour, the hospital gossip mill was running at full speed. That afternoon, Sarah's mother showed up at the hospital. Baby girl, she said, pulling Sarah into an empty room. What are you doing? The whole hospital is talking about you and that white patient. Think about your future. Sarah straightened her back. Mama, I am thinking about my future. Michael makes me happy. He sees me for who I am, not just what I look like or what I do for a living. But he's in a wheelchair. Her mother protested. How will he provide for you? What about children? What will people say? People will always say something, Mama, Sarah replied firmly. But for once in my life, I'm going to listen to my heart instead of other people's opinions. That evening, after her shift ended, Sarah found Michael waiting in the hospital parking lot. He had brought her favorite coffee from the cafe across the street. I heard your mother visited, he said, handing her the cup. I guess she's not a fan. Sarah sat on a nearby bench, level with Michael's wheelchair. She's worried. Everyone's worried. They think we're making a huge mistake. Michael reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek. Do you think we're making a mistake? No, Sarah whispered. When I'm with you, everything feels right. But Michael, this won't be easy. People will stare. They'll talk. Let them, he said with a smile. We'll give them something worth talking about. Sarah Jenkins, will you go on a date with me? Now that you're not my therapist anymore, there's nothing stopping us. Sarah laughed through her tears. Where would we go? There's this great jazz club downtown. They have wheelchair access, and the dance floor is perfect for showing off some of those moves we practiced. Sarah looked at him, this man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll go on a date with you. As they sat in the parking lot, planning their first official date, Sarah's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from concerned friends and family. But for the first time in her life, she didn't care what anyone else thought. Michael reached for her hand again. You know what the best part about dancing is? He asked. When you find the right partner, everything else fades away. The music plays, and it's just the two of you, moving together in perfect harmony. Sarah squeezed his hand, knowing that their dance was just beginning. It wouldn't be easy, but the best dances never were. They were about to show the world that love doesn't need permission, doesn't follow rules, and certainly doesn't care about wheelchairs or skin color. Looking into Michael's eyes, Sarah knew that sometimes the bravest dance of all is the one your heart leads you to, even when the whole world is telling you to sit it out. 6 months into their relationship, Sarah and Michael had grown used to the stares and whispers. Their love had only grown stronger with each challenge they faced together. Michael had started teaching adaptive dance classes at a local community center, and Sarah often helped out on weekends. One Saturday morning, Michael seemed unusually nervous when he picked Sarah up. There's a special event at the center today, he said, fidgeting with his wheelchair controls. Would you mind coming with me? Sarah noticed he was dressed more formally than usual, wearing a crisp blue button-down shirt and dark slacks. Of course, she said, though something felt different about his request. When they arrived at the community center, Sarah was surprised to see cars filling the parking lot. I thought the center was closed on Saturdays, she said. Michael just smiled mysteriously. It usually is. As they entered the main hall, Sarah gasped. The room had been transformed. Fairy lights twinkled from the ceiling, and soft music played in the background. All of Michael's dance students were there, along with their families. But what shocked Sarah most was seeing her own family standing among the crowd. Her mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Baby girl, she said, hugging Sarah tight. I'm sorry I was so wrong about Michael. Watching you two these past months, I've never seen you so happy. Before Sarah could respond, Michael wheeled to the center of the room. Sarah, he called out, his voice clear and strong. Would you join me for a dance? Their song, At Last by Etta James, began playing. Sarah walked to Michael, her heart pounding. They began to dance the way they had learned together, her movements flowing with his wheelchair in perfect harmony. You know, Michael said as they danced, when I had my accident, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never dance again, never find love again. He paused, guiding them in a gentle turn. But then I met you. The music softened, and Michael stopped dancing. The room grew quiet. Sarah Jenkins, he said, reaching into his pocket, you didn't see my wheelchair when everyone else couldn't see past it. You danced with me when others said it wasn't possible. You loved me when people said it wasn't proper. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as Michael pulled out a small velvet box. My legs may not work, he continued, his voice thick with emotion, but my heart works perfectly. And it beats for you, Sarah. Every single day, it beats for you. Opening the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring, Michael looked up at Sarah with tears in his eyes. "Will you marry me? Will you keep dancing with me for the rest of our lives?" The room held its breath. Sarah looked around at the faces watching them, her mother, who had learned to see beyond her prejudices, Michael's students, who had shown her how love could transform lives, and Michael himself, the man who had taught her that true love knows no boundaries. "Yes," Sarah whispered, then louder, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The room erupted in cheers as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger. Sarah's mother rushed forward to embrace them both, crying happy tears. "I had a little help planning this," Michael admitted, gesturing to the crowd. "Your mom picked out the ring." Sarah turned to her mother in surprise. "Really?" "Baby," her mother said, wiping her eyes. "When you love someone right, it changes you. Michael showed me that love is love, no matter what package it comes in." As their friends and family celebrated around them, Michael pulled Sarah close for another dance. "You know what the best part is?" he whispered in her ear. "What's that?" Sarah asked, still admiring her ring. "We get to prove them all wrong, every single day. We get to show the world that love doesn't need legs to dance." Sarah leaned down and kissed him, not caring who was watching. In that moment, she knew that their love story wasn't just about them anymore. It was about showing others that true love breaks down every barrier, jumps every hurdle, and dances to its own beautiful rhythm. As they celebrated late into the evening, Sarah and Michael's story became a testament to the power of love over prejudice, of hope over fear, and of two hearts that refused to let anything stand in the way of their perfect dance together. The months following their engagement flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Sarah and Michael faced unique challenges planning their special day, but they tackled each one with love and creativity. One sunny afternoon, they visited Paradise Gardens, their fifth wedding venue of the week. The owner, Mrs. Anderson, walked them through the beautiful space. "It's perfect," Sarah breathed, looking at the wide pathways and elegant ramps that were already part of the garden's design. "My late husband used a wheelchair," Mrs. Anderson explained with a gentle smile. "I made sure our gardens could be enjoyed by everyone." Michael squeezed Sarah's hand. After so many venues that treated his wheelchair as an inconvenience, they had finally found someone who understood. Planning their first dance brought its own special considerations. They hired Jason, a dance instructor who specialized in adaptive movement, to help them create something magical. "People expect the first dance to be traditional," Jason said during their first session. "Let's show them how beautiful different can be." Together, they choreographed a dance that combined Sarah's graceful movements with Michael's wheelchair techniques. Hours of practice filled their evenings, often ending in laughter when things didn't go as planned. "You know," Michael said one night after practice, "my accident took away my old way of dancing, but it gave me something better. It gave me you." The biggest surprise came when Sarah's mother hosted their engagement party. The same woman who had once opposed their relationship now stood proudly before their friends and family. "When Sarah first told me about Michael," she began her speech, tears in her eyes, "I was afraid for her. I thought love needed to look a certain way, but these two taught me that real love doesn't follow rules. It makes its own path." Not everyone was as supportive. Some of Sarah's relatives declined their wedding invitations. A few of Michael's old friends questioned if he was being fair to Sarah, marrying her when he couldn't be a proper husband. One evening, after receiving another declined invitation, Sarah found Michael in his adaptive dance studio, practicing their wedding dance alone. "Does it bother you?" she asked softly. "The people who won't come?" Michael stopped spinning his wheelchair and looked at her. "The only person I need at our wedding is you. Everyone else is just decoration." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Well, and maybe my mom. She'd never forgive us if we eloped." Their wedding registry also raised eyebrows. Instead of traditional gifts, they asked for donations to start an adaptive dance program for children with disabilities. "What about towels and china?" Sarah's Aunt Patricia complained during a family dinner. "We have enough stuff," Michael explained patiently. "What we want is to give other people the chance to dance." As the wedding day drew closer, Sarah and Michael faced the usual pre-wedding stress, plus some unique concerns. They had to ensure every aspect of their ceremony was accessible, from the altar platform to the reception layout. The most touching moment came when Michael's physical therapy patients, many of whom had become close friends, surprised them with a wedding gift, a specially modified wheelchair for the ceremony, painted white with golden wheels. "Now you'll both shine on your big day," said Tommy, a teenager who had been taking Michael's adaptive dance classes. 1 week before the wedding, Sarah found Michael looking at old videos of himself dancing before the accident. Having second thoughts, she asked, worried. Michael turned to her with that smile she had fallen in love with. "Just the opposite. I was thinking how my accident seemed like the end of my world, but it was actually the beginning. It led me to you." He pulled her onto his lap, spinning them both in a slow circle. "Besides," he added with a wink, "I got something special planned for our first dance." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, but Michael just smiled mysteriously. "You'll have to wait and see. But trust me, they'll be worth it." As they sat together, planning the final details of their wedding, both Sarah and Michael knew that their ceremony would be more than just a celebration of their love. It would be a testament to the power of seeing beyond appearances, of breaking down barriers, and of dancing to the rhythm of your own heart. The morning of Sarah and Michael's wedding dawned bright and clear. At her mother's house, Sarah sat in front of the mirror while her bridesmaids helped with her hair and makeup. Her white dress, specially designed to flow beautifully whether she was standing or sitting in Michael's lap during their dance, hung nearby. "Baby girl," her mother said, placing the pearl necklace that had been her grandmother's around Sarah's neck. "You've never looked more beautiful." In another room across town, Michael was getting ready with his best man, Tony. His white tuxedo jacket contrasted perfectly with his golden wheeled chair. "Nervous?" Tony asked, helping Michael with his bow tie. "Only about the surprise," Michael replied, patting the small journal in his pocket. "Everything else. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." At Paradise Gardens, guests began arriving. The garden paths had been lined with white and gold ribbons, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees despite the morning sun. The aisle was wide and smooth, perfect for Michael's chair. Sarah's arrival created a stir. She stepped out of the white car, her dress catching the sunlight. Her father, who had been quiet about the marriage until recently, took her arm with tears in his eyes. "I was wrong," he whispered to her. "Michael is more of a man than most I know. You chose well, baby girl." Meanwhile, Michael waited at the altar, his golden wheelchair gleaming. When the music started and the doors opened, he caught his first glimpse of Sarah. His heart stopped for a moment. She was radiant, glowing with happiness as she walked toward him. The ceremony was beautiful in its uniqueness. Instead of the traditional walk around the altar, Sarah and Michael had choreographed a simple wheelchair dance. They moved in perfect harmony as they exchanged their vows. "Sarah," Michael began, his voice strong and clear, "before I met you, I thought my accident had ended my dreams. But you showed me that sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as challenges. You danced with me when others said it wasn't possible. You loved me when others said it wasn't practical. You saw me, not my wheelchair." Sarah wiped away tears as she spoke her vows. "Michael, you taught me that love doesn't need to follow anyone else's rules. You showed me that true dance comes from the heart, not just the legs. I promise to keep dancing with you every day of our lives." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Sarah leaned down to kiss Michael, and the garden erupted in cheers and applause. Even the guests who had been skeptical about their relationship were wiping away tears. At the reception, everyone waited eagerly for their first dance. The dance floor had been specially polished to allow Michael's wheelchair to glide smoothly. But before the music started, Michael pulled out the small journal from his pocket. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room, "everyone here knows about my surprise except you. For the past 6 months, I've been working with a team of doctors and physical therapists. With new technology and a lot of determination, I've been keeping a secret." The crowd gasped as 2 assistants helped Michael stand from his wheelchair. With the help of advanced leg braces hidden under his pants, he stood tall, supported but upright. Sarah covered her mouth in shock, tears streaming down her face. "I may not be able to walk normally," Michael said, holding out his hand to her, "but for our first dance, I wanted to meet you halfway." As At Last began playing, Michael and Sarah shared their first dance in a beautiful combination of standing and seated movements. They had practiced both versions, and now they flowed between them seamlessly. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Later that evening, as they swayed together under the stars, Sarah whispered, "You didn't have to stand for me. I love you exactly as you are." Michael kissed her softly. "I know. That's exactly why I wanted to do it. Because you loved me without expecting me to change. You gave me the strength to try something I never thought possible." Their wedding day was more than just a celebration of their love. It was a testament to the power of seeing beyond appearances, of believing in possibilities, and of dancing to the music in your heart, no matter how life asks you to dance. 1 year after their magical wedding, Sarah and Michael sat together in their doctor's office, holding hands tightly. The pregnancy test had been positive, and today they would see their baby for the first time. "I know some people worried about this," Michael said, squeezing Sarah's hand. "But we've always known that love finds a way." Dr. Roberts entered with a broad smile. "Ready to meet your little dancer?" she asked, preparing the ultrasound equipment. As the sound of their baby's heartbeat filled the room, Sarah and Michael's eyes filled with tears. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. "Wait a minute," Dr. Roberts said, moving the ultrasound wand. "Do you hear that? There's not just one heartbeat. There are two. Congratulations, you're having twins." Michael's jaw dropped. "Twins," he whispered in amazement. Sarah laughed through her tears. "Two babies. Our family's getting a double blessing." The news spread quickly. Sarah's mother, who had become Michael's biggest supporter, immediately started buying matching baby outfits. Their adaptive dance studio, now a successful community center, buzzed with excitement. 6 months into the pregnancy, Sarah and Michael transformed their house to accommodate their growing family. They worked together to create a nursery that would be accessible for Michael's wheelchair while still being practical for Sarah. "You know what's funny?" Sarah said one evening as they organized baby clothes. "Everyone who doubted us keeps asking how you'll manage with twins. They still don't understand that your wheelchair doesn't define your ability to be an amazing father." Michael smiled, folding tiny onesies with expert care. "We'll show them, just like we've shown them everything else. Besides, I got some new tricks up my sleeve." He demonstrated the special baby carriers they had designed for his wheelchair, allowing him to safely hold both babies while moving around. They had thought of everything, adapting traditional parenting tools to work for their unique situation. One Saturday morning, during Sarah's 8th month, Michael was teaching his regular adaptive dance class when he noticed Sarah watching from the doorway, her hands resting on her large belly. "Come here," he called to her with a smile. "The twins need their dance lesson." The whole class watched as Michael guided Sarah in a gentle wheelchair dance, one they had modified to accommodate her pregnancy. Their love story had inspired so many others. They now had regular classes for couples where one partner used a wheelchair. "Remember when people said we couldn't do this?" Sarah asked later that night. "That we couldn't be a normal family?" Michael placed his hand on her belly, feeling the twins kick. "We're not trying to be normal," he replied. "We're trying to be happy. And we're succeeding." 2 weeks later, Sarah went into labor. The hospital staff, many of whom had known them since their early days, worked seamlessly to include Michael in every aspect of the delivery. After several hours of labor, their miracles arrived. A boy and a girl, perfectly healthy and beautiful. As Michael held his daughter while Sarah held their son, he couldn't hold back his tears. "Welcome to the world, Hope and Daniel," he whispered. They had chosen names that represented their journey. Hope for the faith they'd kept in their love, and Daniel, meaning God is my judge, because they had learned to listen to their hearts rather than others' judgments. The nurses helped arrange the babies so Michael could hold both of them in his wheelchair, using the special carriers they had practiced with. The sight of him smoothly wheeling around the room, speaking softly to his newborns, made Sarah fall in love with him all over again. "Look at us now," Sarah said, watching her husband with their children. "Who would have thought that one physical therapy session would lead to all this?" Michael wheeled back to her bedside, their babies sleeping peacefully in their carriers. "I did," he said softly. "The moment you saw me as a dancer instead of a patient, I knew our story would be extraordinary." Together, they had proven that love knows no boundaries, that family comes in all forms, and that the most beautiful dances in life are the ones we create ourselves. Their twins were living proof that miracles happen, not just in the big moments like wedding day surprises, but in the small, daily choices to love without limits. As they gathered their babies close, surrounded by the joy of new life, Sarah and Michael knew that their greatest dance was just beginning. The dance of parenthood, with all its challenges and triumphs, performed to the perfect rhythm of their hearts beating as one.